Our gospel lesson comes from Matthew chapter 14, 13 through 21. Matthew's telling of the feeding of the 5,000. The feeding of the 5,000 is unique and special in the Gospels because it's included in all four Gospels. There are many stories about what Jesus did during his life and ministry, but there are only a few where all four Gospels retell this account. So why is the feeding of the 5,000 so important? Matthew skips over the debate happening in Mark and Luke about how much money they have and can they go somewhere and buy the food. Instead, Jesus says, feed them. And they reply, well, we only have this amount of food. Now, the Gospel of John tells us that there was a lad there. And the lad goes over here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many? So from John we find out where the food comes from. And from Matthew and Mark and Luke, we find out how much they had to spend. But Jesus kind of discounts this and says, now wait a minute. Do you have faith that God will provide? And he blesses it. And he gives them the baskets to go feed the people. And there's enough food left over to fill 12 baskets. That is the 12 tribes of Israel. John makes it clear that the bread that's being offered is symbolic of the Son of Man. For the Son of Man is the bread of heaven. Just as God provided in the wilderness, God's providing now. And the bread that God provides is Jesus. For Jesus is the bread of life. Matthew, Mark, and Luke don't go into this detail, but rather make this connection during the Last Supper. It's in the Last Supper when Jesus says, "This is my body which is broken for you." And the event is so significant that in Luke, when the men are going on the road to Emmaus and Jesus breaks the bread, their eyes are opened and they recognize that it's Jesus. For Jesus is the bread provided. Jesus is the blessing that is given. Jesus blesses the bread and gives it to the disciples, just as he gives his teaching and his authority to the disciples. The disciples then give it to the crowd that is there, that is the first that are willing to hear. And from that, the blessing will extend to all 12 tribes of Israel and beyond, to the Gentiles, to the world. The feeding of the 5,000 is not just about bread and fish. The feeding of the 5,000 is an illustration of how the Word of God contained in Jesus Christ will be broken and blessed, so that the bread is spread out to the world and the fish are gathered. This is the point of the feeding of the 5,000.